Good evening, everyone. My name is Nazareth. I work here at the Africa Center as a public program organizer. Thank you for your patience and thank you for coming here tonight. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Africa Center is a cultural institution that's focused on transforming the world's understanding of Africa, its diaspora, and the role of people of African descent in the world. And we do this through public programs and exhibitions and by partnering with other organizations that are highlighting Africans in the diaspora and on the continent. And tonight we're excited to be partnering with the African Poetry Book Fund by my good friend Rosina and Kwame Dawes. So if Rosina could come up here and give us a little bit more of a background on tonight's program.
Thank you. Thank you. Shout out to Nazareth Yamane, who brought the APBF here. Shout out to you. Shout out to Kayla Mellon for creating the graphics for this event. And shout out to all of you for being here. How's everyone doing? Yes, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. My name is Rosina Haptamariam, and I'm the project manager of the African Poetry Digital Portal, which is an initiative that gathers and archives African poetry. The portal is another way among so many ways that the African Poetry Book Fund prioritizes and makes accessible the cultural and knowledge productions of Africa and its many diasporas. The APBF is how I and so many others first got to know the work of people like Matam Shifarao and Ladan Osman and Safia Al-Hilo, Romeo Oregon, and the list goes on, and the incredible writers that you will hear from tonight. This is to say that the APBF has made so many worlds possible. For this, I am forever grateful to the APBF and its co-founder, Kwame Dawes. Y'all can clap. Yeah, her. I've never met someone more committed to centering African poetry than Kwame Dawes. Kwame pours into the creative and intellectual resources in Africa and its diasporas as practice, and does so with so much heart. Any opportunity I'm given to give Kwame his flowers, I will happily take it. Y'all can clap for that again. Yes, it's very cool to be able to work with you, Kwame. And beyond my own words, I'm also very happy to share an abbreviated summary of Kwame Dawes' many achievements. Like I said, it's abbreviated because the receipts really are endless. So just so we all know, Kwame Dawes is the author of numerous, like over 22, maybe, I think, books of poetry and fiction, criticism, and essays. His most recent collection, Unhistory, was co-written with John Kinsella. It just dropped, I believe, in the UK and will be dropping early next year in the US. Dawes is a George W. Holmes University professor of English and Glenna Leshai editor of Prairie Schooner. He teaches in the Pacific MFA program and is a series editor of the African Poetry Book Series, director of the African Poetry Book Fund, and artistic director of the Calabash International Literary Festival. He is a chancellor for the Academy of American Poets and a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. Kwame Dawes is the winner of the prestigious Wyndham Campbell Award for Poetry and was a finalist for the 2022 Neustadt International Prize for Literature. In 2022, Kwame Dawes was awarded the Order of Distinction Commander Class by the government of Jamaica. Period. Give it up for Kwame Dawes.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosina. She's such a wonderful person. And she's really like, it's always good to have people who do the thing and do it well. So welcome to everybody. It's good to see all of you. Some of you I haven't seen in a long time, and it's nice to see everybody here. First of all, shout out to Johnny Temple, who is here. Johnny Temple, editor, owner, whatever you want to call it, proprietor of the great Akashic books. And they've been partners with us for the APBF Chapbook series since the second year, the second edition. And they're just stunning books, right? Right? I mean, they're beautifully done, and we're really grateful to Johnny for that. We're here to hear poetry, and I want us to sort of to listen to the poets. What we'll do is we have these poets who are zooming in from different parts of the world, and they will share their work. I'll introduce them. And then after they've read, then I'm going to introduce the poets who are part of the box set, who are here, who are able to come here to read, and they'll come one after the other to read. And then we'll spend a little time chatting on stage. I'll ask them one or two questions, but mostly sort of open the space out for people to ask questions. I'm really excited about being in this space, the Africa Center. Several years ago, my wife and I came here to see the space and so on and so forth. And Tawiah was the person who brought us in here, and it wasn't all like painted and all set up, and so it was like early days. But they gave us these, it was very hi-fi, scientific stuff. We had these things, so we could see virtually the whole place. It was really, really cool. So it's been fantastic, and it's been fantastic to follow the center on Instagram and the wonderful work. So this is a long time coming, this opportunity to be in this space and to see this happening. And I'm really grateful to Rosina and of course the folks here, Nazareth and so on, who've been fantastic in sort of bringing this dream to be. And we want to keep it going, because we should really celebrate our poetry. And that's the whole point of the exercise. I think I describe poets as the chronicles of sentiment and time. And in a sense, poets throughout history have given us a side of the historical experience, a side of human experience that typically history books do not capture. Chronicles by historians and so on and so forth tend to be focused on power, on issues of war, conquest, control, and so on. What the poets do is they write in the moment, and they capture the heart, the spirit of people, just ordinary people living their life, but living their lives in a sublimated and beautiful way. People discovering exploring what beauty is and what beauty means, and finding language for it. And in a sense, that connection across time and across history that poets bring about is the connection of humanity. But there's a negative side to this narrative, which is that if we silence those poets, if we do not allow those poets to speak, we do not allow those poets' voices to be recorded and to be kept in some place and to be carried through, there is a perception that the people who those poets belong to did not have heart, spirit, creativity, art, beauty, and all those things. And one of the pernicious intentions of colonialism, imperialism, and so on, was to deny that these beauties, these wonderful, what Bob Marley would call the beauties, came out of so many people, so many cultures, and especially out of Africa. And so the APBF is committed to the idea that poets must write whatever they want to write. Poets must write in the moment, and then poets must be heard, must be listened to, and recorded, and archived, and kept. And I don't care what they're doing, what they're saying, because I trust the poet to find their own humanity and to find their way there. Flawed, broken, but that's the beauty of it. And in that presence, I think something tremendous happens. So every time we do this box set, we are discovering. We are not dictating. We're not saying this is what you should be writing about, but we are asking, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? And how are you finding language to describe it and to explore it? And in this particular box set, you have so many examples of that power and that beauty. APBF has published about 180 poets in the space of less than 10 years. 180 African poets in less than 10 years, right? Before we had APBF, if there were any, I don't know if somebody might tell me, I've been in many places and taught and said this, but finding collected poems, collected works by an African poet who was not an Afrikaner from South Africa was virtually impossible. We've managed to publish Amata Edu, Kofi Awona, Gabriel Okara. I mean, the list will go on and on and on. And it's important that we chronicle and we collect these writers' works. And some of these poets that we're going to listen to are emerging. Some of them are starting to break through with their voices. They will continue to grow. I see Lathan is here, Lathan Osman is here. I mean, like, this is what happens, right? And we want it to continue and so on. So I'm very, very, very pleased about this opportunity. So what I'm going to do, very straightforward, very simple. I'm just going to read the bios of the writers who are online. I'll read all the bios first, and then they'll read in that order, one at a time. They'll read they'll read for 5 minutes because they timed themselves and they promised themselves, God and the universe, that they will stick to the time. They have a disadvantage. We can just cut them off. No, so that's what we'll do. I should also say, just as a note, that if you buy a box set, if you buy the copy of the box set, you'll see that each of these chapbooks have a very unique and distinctive cover. What we've done with each box set is we've worked with a particular artist, an African artist, and they've been generous enough to give us a suite of their work. And from that suite of their work, we've been able to have each box set feature a single African artist. And it's really been a great relationship. All our books, by the way, feature work by African artists, and that's one of our commitments. This particular box set, like I said, if you look at it, you'll get a good introduction to Victor Ekpuk's work. And there's information about him, there's a bio and so on and so forth about him that I think you will enjoy. Okay, so let me introduce the poets. Samuel Adeyemi is a poetry editor at Afro Literary Magazine, a Best of the Net and Pushcart nominee. He is the winner of the Nigerian Students Poetry Prize in 2021. His works have appeared or are forthcoming in Palette Poetry, Frontier Poetry, 580 Split, Strange Horizons, Ogbo, Brittle Paper, Jalada, and elsewhere. I think since this bio was written, he's probably placed his work in many other places. So, so he'll read first. Then Nikitta Dede Adjirakor is a Ghanaian scholar and creative writer. She's currently a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Beirut, examining digital African language, literature, and popular culture. She is the producer of the film A Thousand Needles, which documents African women's sexual and reproductive health stigmas. Her work can be seen on her website, which you'll find is listed on the book. Followed by Rabha Ashry, Egyptian from Abu Dhabi and based in Chicago. She's the recipient of the Brunel International African Poetry Prize, which is now called the what's her name? Bernardine Evaristo African Poetry Prize. She won it in 2020. Her chapbook, Loving the Alien, was published by Black Sunflowers in 21. Her work has been published in the Oye's Review Collected 2018, Postscript Magazine, and Strange Horizons. Then we have Jakky Bankong-Obi, is a poet from Kakewe Bibo of Boki Cross River State, Nigeria. She lives and writes from Abuja, and her work has been featured or is forthcoming in London Grip, the Kalahari Review, Zarf Poetry, Gutter Magazine, Whole Heart Pulp, Pigeonholes, Pipe Wrench Magazine, and Memento, an anthology of contemporary Nigerian poetry, among others. Jakky is co-editor at Ice Flow Press. And then Kophy is a Ghanaian poet whose poems have been featured and are forthcoming in literary magazines such as Agni, Lolwe, Four-Way Review, Pigeonholes as well, Indianapolis Review, Glass Poetry, Tampered Press, and many others. He's the winner of the inaugural Samira Bawumia, there we go, Bawumia Literature Prize in Poetry. He's also the author of Walking on Water, selected by the Library of Africa and the African Diaspora, and Light Factory Publications for the Reading the Migration Library, LRML series. So these are the poets who will read one after the other. And then I'll come back on and introduce the poets who are present here, who will read next, all right? So let's enjoy them. And again, thank you so much for coming. All right, thanks.
Samuel, are you here?
Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for the lack of video. The power went out some minutes ago, but I believe the reading would make up for that. So I'm glad to be here. I'm grateful to be reading amongst other brilliant writers like myself. So I'd be reading from my chapbook, Rose Ash, and quickly, the first poem is The Ladder, and it's on page 8 of the chapbook. So here it goes. On the ladder, forfeited all if you've come looking for God. This was the same place I lost him. There is nothing here but the absence of the Spirit. The Father in his grace departed years ago. Perhaps if you cut me open, a whit of light may still sear your skin. But do not mistake the light of God for God. The souvenir is accidental. He once dwelt within these temple walls, singing from the valley of my voice. Come look into the tomb of my bones. He is not here. He is risen from me. And even the angels followed him. I promise I tried to make them stay. We wrestled skin against the opposite of skin. I pulled them by their abundance of white, but when they turned and looked into my face, I had no choice but to let them go. My friend, I tried. There were blisters sprouting around my eyes. I was blind for half a decade. I basked within a shadow. It was hell, but lonelier. I could not see my flames. Dear darkness, did you know this? I could not see my flames. I guess they were blue. So quickly, the next poem is Inception, and it's right next to the poem I just read on page 9. Inception. The women from my tribe used to shave their heads to mourn their husbands. The razor threw tufts of blood. I do not know why I tell you this. I am not the wife of any family's dead. What I'm trying to say is listen. The elegies keep following me to sleep. It happened again last night. When father died, he didn't. I woke after the dream, ran to his room. I looked at him, his chest widening with breath. Good morning, I said. You're alive was what I meant. You could hear it, the gratitude flooding my voice, not to God, but to the wonder of God. Mother asked me later what I saw in my sleep. I sang her the elegies. She began to pray against the spirit of death. In my tribe, the word Allah translates to dream. In Igbo, it loosely means the goddess of death. What I'm trying to say is loss begins at the precipice of language. At the threshold of another tongue, the people I love are not alive to see me love them. The next poem is Penury. All I am known for is desire and thirst. I want to be the object of want. If I could, I would pull out the river from my right eye, just so the other watches in envy. Look, little iris, I would say, lost after me. And of course it will. The hunger of the flesh is for the flesh. A lover's open mouth trembles for another open mouth. Likewise, I am doing it, opening to the grace of the world, hoping it would one day enter me like a lance made only of light. And what did God say to my lack? Take the vines of your sorrow and make from it a garland. Holy Father, my sorrow is sexless. I do not know how to touch it. Last time I burned the flowers, behold, my fingers still smell the rose ash. I have spent so much time on learning the mechanics of religion. I have turned myself inside out. I sat next to it, my open skin, scraping the names of God from my bones like a thumb invading a line of seeds. You would think I am not prodigal enough to return to his feet. My heart's hardened like a wreath of two spines, but I know the roads back to God. When I reached the shore of his joy, he was the water washing it away. See, I did not choose my void. If the angels want me, I will let them pull me by the jaw, my body ascending into heaven. There is no greater absence than this. I know the miracles I want. I know I cannot hold them. May something find me and kiss the rim of my hollow. May the pits be filled by the sound of lips. The next poem I'll be reading is titled Homecoming. Sorry I killed the flowers, ma. Sorry I killed the flowers, ma. They were so pretty, but we were not going to eat them. Forgive me, I sound so cavalier. I promise I am softer than my horns. It's just difficult to imagine any kind of beauty with such hunger quaking my bones. After 7 months, I returned home. My family had turned the house into a terrible garden. Green and pink chaos sprawled all over the front yard. I asked Ma why this happened. She smiled with her eyes and said something about money and growing our own food. I could reason with that. We had so little, but the ground was so much, so fertile our pockets could afford not to starve. So when I took the hoe, startling the amber frog hiding in the bushes, I spared the other plants, the vegetables, the beans, the red peppers, the corns, oh, especially the corns. We would boil or roast them during those cold evenings. I spared them, but no, not the flowers. Will you ever forgive me, Ma? The weeds were choking them anyway. The last poem I'd be reading is titled White Noise Apartment. What doesn't irritate me these days? Even my shadow, the body's evidence, is disturbance. But we can tolerate light since we cannot hear it. Graceful thing, bless your silence. The way you move through a body needless of orchestra. With sound, I cannot find a compromise. Not in this apartment. No thrush can live here. It will leap to nest somewhere gentle, free from sharp chatter, where the loudest voice in the room is its own chirp. Like any lost child, I want to go home. I miss the peace of familiar blood, the smell of my solitude circling around. But I do not have these anymore. Here, white noise prevails. Everyone's always screaming screaming at something delicate. The bird in me cannot survive this. I am too velvety for collision, physical or sonic. Bring me a room that doesn't threaten with tongues, voices void of swords, a church without the violence of vespers. Let every noise strike my bone, then waft through it without percussion. I desire pure calm, the aura of nothing, the sound of diamonds crackling at the ocean floor. The boatman cannot hear it, the wood gliding across the water's quiet skin. Give me stillness like that, soft ripple of blue. Thank you so much.
Hi. I'm gonna read from my chapbook titled Learning to Say My Name. The first poem I'm gonna read is titled In the Hospital. I cannot tell you when we begin to fold into each other, my mother and I, even though there is a door separating us. While she is held together by middle-aged women, shaking and whimpering in her kaba, told to grieve properly by swallowing herself. I am fastened to a bed by a doctor who touches me like I am the lake he wants to drown me. I choke on my whispered, I've never been touched like that before, as the doctor scoffs because I am sin he has uncovered, and the nurse mutters sorry like a calculated prayer. Says I am a university girl as he spreads my knees. Says I must like doing it with the boys as his hands plunge between my thighs. Says he is the act before a husband as the nurse strokes my forehead. I want to take my mons into his mouth and show him surrender, but these mons are familiar, a library of the women who raised me, and these mons are in my head like a trophy, searching for wounds to breathe in. The next poem I will read is titled Learning to Say My Name. I have planted my mother in my mouth so that when I say I love you, she can curl around the words. But my language is not enough for her, and my I love you is dimming the glow out of the sun. I grasp unreliably at my mother's lineage that sits on both our bodies. She says I am claimed by my father and his father, who announced my belonging as her water birth. My father is dead. I lose what slippery connection I had. I hyphenate my name with hers, create a dash to firm belonging, till we are two parts of a whole, and when I say I love you, I am tethered to her forever. But my name, Dede, is an unnaming. Shy of the warmth she needs, Dede, the first daughter asks, the first daughter of whom? If a name is untethered from a father, does it live? The next poem I'll read is titled Glass Beads. The girls are half naked, floating through the streets as they arrive into womanhood. You watch them with envy because you still have to close your eyes when people kiss on the television. And daddy won't let you join the initiation because we are Christians. The beads rounding their waists are heavier than yours, and you wonder if daddy can rip them off like you did yours last night. The next one I'll read is titled Home is Not Here in This Body. I too want to remember how to wear my body again. In this house, everything remains unfinished, and we mistake resignation for patience. I was named after a father's hope, a future appointment that leaves me untethered in the present. Perhaps this is why I fold into myself, close my fists and wait for the world's permission to become. When your name is a stranger, faith is what wears your feet through each door that arrives at nothingness. I ask myself, what is faith if not the emptiness I choke on while washing it down with possibility? Yet, mother tells me faith is all we have. And when I filter the world through her gaze, I see her again, longing for a lover's promise, waiting for a daughter's survival. In my body, everything remains unfinished, and I mistake emptiness for peace. I am at war with myself. Home is not here in this body. On another trip to the emergency room, I asked the doctor to find my cells and pass them on to me. These hands are free to grasp them like a desperate prayer. When your name is a stranger, you learn that just because a thing is alive does not mean it is whole. By that I mean I have forgotten how to wear a body that is whole. I mean home is not here in this body. I mean even as I meet myself with violence, speak tenderness into me. The final poem I would read is titled Becoming a Mother. Lately, I've been nourishing these tumors inside me, thinking of myself as a mother, running my hands over my rounded body and looking for a heartbeat that isn't there. Perhaps there is something to be said about madness, about finding consolation in a swelling body that is an empty home, simply because it is a sign of possibility. I've been trying to find language that does not swallow my consolation, no matter how they say it, sorry, po. There's something disrespectful about how they choke on my solace, as if finding consolation in a wound that has made a home out of me is not too an act of love. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'll be reading from my chapbook. First of all, thank you all for coming, and I'm very happy to be here to read for you. I'm reading from my chapbook, What Still Yields, and I'll be reading In a Year of Flowers. In a year of flowers, I confess I cannot tell Cesium from gardenias in December's austere mien. Tropical and perennial, their scurry stalks remind me, despite air, the fallow field, the mud-caked river, long and drawn-out winter of snowed-in meadows elsewhere. Still, praise the resilience of aloes, wild chlorhodendron, and the isora's dendritic limbs, fingering the crusted and bare spine, pistillate through Harmattan's dolorous days. Wait until February thaws grim-eyed nettles, rangy jatropha, and his scattering clematis from the waking gyre. The world, a slow-moving garden reveal, April sings in the muted tones of frangipanis and morning glories. All of it dewy with the sheen of first love, that bated breath, hum before the kiss, is May, a cold storm that breaks into June just right. It sets everything blooming. Lush and carpeting green moss, in cool meadows I could laze forever in, but the jacaranda's bunting. What will be love's sweet blush, hectic as a flush of hydrangeas in July, roses and calla lilies rouging in their sultry mead, the humidity, a fecund domain, what riot of moths and bees will resist to nectar, the honey and the honeycomb, the fall glow of August as the quiet reckoning of linear time. The harvest is a bouquet of poses, accents of celosia and jasmine, lantana and queen of the night, tendrils of trade winds on the heels of a crisp October, rumors of distant storms we have weathered. A climatic anticlimax, we can tell this time will be harder. To survive, they will have to go back, hunker down to seed, to bloom again, root. Okay, I'll be reading another poem, Brazen, for my grandmother. Herbs cooked in blackened pot, in water, adding nothing, over open flame, invoke the mother, the father, all the ancestors near and far. Dig earth, plant things, pull roots, chop at stems, deep cuts, swift and beautiful snips, light-handed razor, sharp kisses of pain, make place for new growth. Intrude, pour salt on fresh wound, kill the tender thing while it is still new. Give no room for the old malice to creep in. A poultice for festering sores, draw out poison from the hidden crevices, entice the harm out of limbs of comfort. Ori and palm kernel oil spell the air, stand in moon shadow, give in to yearning, cross times 3, make wishes, pour water from the calabash, make a libation, spittle to the navel, your girl child comes, burying your mother again. In the hot afternoon sun, cut 2 marks on the baby's soft skin, mar and blemish, dark ash from the night lamp, rub in, ward of infant death, with pestle and stone feed, the lemongrass and stalk, slender the reeds, gallant the dance, wave the hills, palm wine and color nuts, rhythm and woo, see through the sweet, the tangy, pine and sing, impudent green till tawny, till old and worn, make fire on yesterday's white ash, cogent a far conquest, bridge to the root, maze wonder, make more, take life, barefoot and brazen, brazen, brazen. Okay, so the final poem I'll be reading is False Leads for G after reading Brer Mason Campbell and Nazim Hikmet. In the receding light of the day, my eyes are thirsty and the world is fine. You could never get enough of grassy meadows, ribbons of green and lemon, fronding and cheerful. I am at the doorway of the police station, and the slow wind rustles through the field of lemongrass. And beyond, there are birds singing the evening. I want to believe I can hear your voice in the fray. Inside, someone undone by grief crows brokenly. All this grieving and the dead stay dead. It's true. We are born with the same assurance of death, meaning we do not always have to go looking for some things to find us. The city is known for its throng of mourning doves. To leave the roost is to know the way back. But the real injury is a stray bullet, the indifference of its plunder, a raptor's swoop and stolid violence. A gun shot inside the dove's nest will hardly miss, by which I mean the plume is flight. I could never look into the faces of the dead. On the TV screens, the bodies pile and pile. So look at it this way. The point isn't just about how hard it is to face the cruelty of loss, but to stay soft, to grow new wings. Thank you.
Hello. I will be reading from my chapbook, Grief and Ecstasy. This first poem is called Disconnect. Small in my head wires disconnect. Words crash into each other, and I am mute. Too dry to fill a page, I stall and stutter, too hesitant to move, too small in my head, in this my emptiest year. This poem is called The Same Letter. I set fire to the same letter every night. I can hear the words behind your words. My heart heaves and I sing, a snake charmer and a girl. My fingers in knots, I can fall into the cartography of our ups and downs, of the in-between doorways. Like a mute, I offer you my hands to read my palms. This one is a love letter to my worst enemy. I started dreaming about running away a decade and a half ago, and some goals you do reach if you dream about them long enough. So here I am, but where does that leave you? I have spent lifetimes trying for you. Where am I when it's not with you? I'm here on the couch, in my living room, next to my dog, behind on cleaning my room and doing my laundry. Mine. This is how I live without you. This is how the days stack up on top of each other since I last saw you or heard your voice. I can't tell you how long it will be, this being away, how long it will take. I can't tell you that I don't miss you sometimes. Sometimes I think about you, but there's nothing new to say, because I want my world to remain foreign and unreachable to you. You are not welcome in it anymore, and that is because I love you, maybe the same way you love me. This one is titled Breakfast. My body grows softer and my hair grows longer. I look like the girl I've never been. My body a home I'm a stranger in. My girlhood a story I can't read. It's been a long winter. I feel my bare branches reaching for the sky. My mouth a sunflower still blooming. And finally, I will read Blue. I find myself submerged in blue, the lake warm and welcoming, not just in the morning, but at night too, your eyes like falling, your sweet face a slice of the moon, your sunlight hair, the war waging on streets near and far, the summer of discontent, the summer we fall and it feels like flying. We both wake up intermittently through the night to whisper, I love you. Nights when, restless, you leave our bed. Still, I call your name and you're by my side, soft. I open like a holy book to you and you read all my pages. Even when, between the two of us, we misread the instructions and forget your wallet again. Even when the call drops hours into another long drive and frustrated, I tell you, this is not okay. Still, you hold my hands, kiss my psalms, love all the verses I haven't written yet. Still, at the end of the night, we rub our feet together, soft and in love. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm excited to be here. I'll be reading some poems from my manuscript, Maceration. The very first poem is What You Will Hear When You Dip Your Head into the Volta River. What you will hear when you dip your head into the Volta River, the unrest of the land where my people planted seeds and harvested themselves, sitting beneath a water they cannot forgive. The roots and the stems standing in the water, calling out to the trees to remind them of who they are. The lake singing about how no one drowns anymore because everyone has learned how to breathe underwater. The promise God made to my people never to destroy their homes with water again. The ghosts of those whose farms were destroyed by the water, saying, look, starvation is the only meaning for lake, and there is no error in calling every puddle of water flood. Here, let me help you understand. Yesterday, we drank the flood we collected in our hands to quiet the hunger in our stomach. Today, we are no different from the flood that taught us that to survive is to be solvent, to eat until the burden of satisfaction is reached. Tomorrow, we will wash our face with a flood that swallowed our voice, to remember and remember and remember to forget that home is a verb. The next poem is It Begins with Love, after Romeo Oregon. Somewhere on the vastness of the Volta Lake, a child is cleaning the surface of the water with his hands before casting his net into the quiet water, as if to see how it begins its day. Child, the water begins with love, with a promise of newness, with a sigh of satisfaction, with everything we pray for when we want to return home. And this is how hunger besets us, makes of us the offsprings of a lost home. It begins with love, I tell you. It always begins with love. Even this hunger of trafficked children wanting to be renamed by their mothers, to one day return smelling less like the water, but instead we see their bodies come back to us, asking for a worthy burial. It always begins with love, I tell you, even drowning, how the water takes us in, whole, without restraint, willing to give us itself until we are soft again. What is the cost of history to the desire for movement? In the loneliness of a city where language bears no resemblance to memory, a bloated body is evidence of yesterday's rain, and I am the stranger asking to be welcomed with a handful of water to clean my hands. The next poem is Returning. In a conversation with my mother about my hometown, she says blood has nothing to do with belonging, which is to say, we do not come from a people or place, but from naming. And what is naming if not a prayer, where every word is a reflection carrying more than one face, like how the word echi means water and to grow, as if to say anything expandable carries an attribute of water. There are some forms of water I am still not conversant with. For instance, I am too familiar with rain, but winter is a stranger to me, which is to say, memory is studded to language, which is to say, language always returns me back where my body cannot be present, to make alive again a place where everything is meant to drown, like the Volta Lake, where dead cocoa stems are the only memories the water cannot swallow. This story doesn't change, but the language to it does, like memory eating its way into history. Every historical statement is a place of recognition that may or may not exist, as in, history is a translation. It is what sits between a name and its understanding. The very last poem I'll be reading is Ghanaian Arithmetic, after Natalie Diaz. In Ghana, about 38% of the population do not have access to potable water, but hundreds die of drowning in Accra annually when the floods come. And when the floods come, they remind us of the difference between empty and emptied. What is the place of memory in the shaping of identity? I can only remember the sound of rainwater as an invitation to leave washable footprints on the earth. I cannot forget the sound of rainwater so heavy it is believed to be an invocation of a flood. But sometimes flood means pour, which implies offering, giving something holy through a ritual, meaning something was sacrificed. It's been 38 years since the flood, but my people are still thirsty. It was 18 years before the drought when the government flooded part of the Volta River Basin, forcing about 1% of the population to relocate with their memories, but not the trees. We are Ghanaians, so we do not care about the trees, but we are filled up in church trying to pray away the hunger. But sometimes hunger means desire, means to be wanted, to be taken, to be swallowed whole without leaving much for remembrance, even when your name is invoked. In 2018, about 0.6% of Ghanaians drowned. In my language, the word for drown translates to water has collected, which sounds like a prayer of return for what water has always owned. Sounds more acceptance than sorrow, more desire than grief. And this is how maceration begins. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, it's stunning, this work. And I just think these poets are doing so much important and difficult work that you know, it's fantastic. So, thanks. Let's just hear it for the poets who just read again. Thank you. Really good work. So I'm going to introduce the next set of poets, and they are here. So I'll read their bios, and then they'll come one after the other in the order that I introduced them, and they'll share with us. And like I said, afterwards we'll have a brief conversation and open it up for some questions and so on. You should know that the Chapbook series has been co-edited with Chris Abani, myself, and him. We've been doing this for since it began. We're just wrapping up the next one. And each of the chapbooks has an introduction, a preface by a fellow poet, or you know. And so one of the interesting things is to see the conversations that poets are having. We heard a reference to poems by Romeo Oriogun. The dialogue between poets, I think, is fantastic. Anyway, first will be Jeremiah Agbaakin, who holds a degree from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. His poems are recently published or forthcoming in Beloit Poetry Journal, Veronica, Kenyan Review, Pleiades, Poet Lore, Poetry North, West, Rattle, West Branch, and elsewhere. He's a recipient of a Tin House Scholarship. He has been a finalist for the Grist Journal Pro Forma Contest, the Chad Walsh Chapbook Series, the Black Warrior Review Poetry Contest, and the Silliman First Book Prize for African Poets. He's a former editor and reader for Africa in Dialogue, Pank, and Jalada, Africa. He lives in Oxford, Mississippi. That's where you are? Yeah. Where he's studying for his MFA at the university. No, he's not. He's done. That's not true. He's finished that. Yeah, he's done with that. Yeah. So he's in Athens, Georgia. That's right. Which is very different from Oxford, Mississippi. So anyway, these bios, of course, are dated, right? And they're all very nice and polite people that they haven't said anything to me about that. Followed by Hazem Fahmy is a writer and critic from Cairo. His poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in the Best American Poetry 2020, the Boston Review and Periscuna, a fine magazine, I must say, Perry Schooner. It's very, very well. There's a guy who is editing it who is remarkable. His criticism has appeared or is forthcoming in the Los Angeles Review of Books, Movie Notebook, Reverse Shot, and Mizna. He runs the newsletter Wust, I'm going to do this wrong, but Wust El Balad, or Substack, and I keep getting emails about that. So that's good. Substack is not stopping. So he'll be then followed by Alain. Hirwa is a creative based in San Marcos, Texas. His work has appeared in Wasafiri and the Carolina Quarterly. He's a student at Texas State University. And then finally, Nneoma Veronica Nwogu is an Igbo American writer, lawyer, and professor. She holds a BA from Wellesley College, an MPhil from Oxford University, and a JD from the University of Michigan. Her academic publications focus on law, justice, and development, natural resource governance, and the role of technology in development. Her literary works have appeared in the Poetry Guild, Farfina, Leverage, and Oxonia Review of Books. With her ancestral home in Mbaise, Nigeria, she now lives in Washington, D.C. So they'll come one after the other and read. So let's just welcome them one after the other.
Good evening. Thank you for that very interesting interlude. Yeah, I'm in Athens now. Today I'll be reading a few poems from my chapbook, and I know that after this there will be a brief conversation. I don't want to give a lot of things out, but for proper context, the poems I'll be reading examine violence and attempted violence at the level of family, and it also examines accountability told through the story of Isaac in the Abrahamic religions. So the first poem I'll be reading today is Confession, Isaac's Confession. At the toss of a coin, I would do anything to save myself. Father, don't we burn enough offering to keep you warm? The ash survived what is left of the fire. The smoke pops in vain. I've confessed a friend to the edge of a teacher's rage, the school's pilot, armed with his quiver of canes. I confessed after breaking my bread for him year long, or was it after the deed? I cannot remember what came before, but I was tender once. It's so easy that he was already shrieking with fever before assembly. What can God do with a missing sacrifice? The God of raised whip, armed with his quiver of canes. What can you do with me? A beast with no heart, long dead even before the knife. A fire won't touch a thing like that. I confess, I have too much heart left in me. Believe me, I am marked with the sign of the ram. You must not forsake me. The second poem that we're reading is an ekphrasis poem, which is modeled after the painting of the Sacrifice of Isaac by the Italian Baroque painter Caravaggio, and it's titled Light Years or Tenebrae. Light Years. In a past life, you are the still life painting. The lights took so long to enter. Come, find the sky and all its dark matter, its sudden meteor shower, like blood spurting from the ram's neck at the feast of the Eid. Drained, the man finds new color in the blood crust of communion wine. The platelets bind the bristles as the sun bleeds from his eyes. For the half light, you will have to tarry for days until the cloth darkens a bit for the shade between hemorrhage and blood meal. You lead the painter where he should go with his fingers. You lead the angel to the knife holding a hand in filicide. You hide every body part in canvas So blessed is the man who can make a mouth and make it scream and stop at once, like centuries later, Picasso's Weeping Woman and Repin's Ivan the Terrible, like Artemisia's Olophrins, like an ember holding its breath in a coal. Blessed is the mouth too for talking to a painter in a language brief as the color between them, for heeding the sculptor's first creed. Agbeju ni bamu ireje. Beware the chisel's vanity as it carves and carves. Beware the bristles stiffened like a cat's whiskers, soaked in blood. The next poem I'll be reading today is Mirror, and it borrows a proverb or a saying from Yoruba, which is Yaniwura Babani Jigi. In Yoruba, we believe that the mother is gold, while the father is the mirror. I still don't know the connection between the two, but this poem is an attempt to find out. Mirror, afraid of what I may discover, I blindfold every mirror at a night market, where a tooth fairy sells shining things, obsidian and coins polished in a rain dream. I pawn away my canines for the saddest violin in stock. In the kitchen, a kettle howls over the flames as steam clouds the glass window. I wipe the fogged glass until I torture my face out of it. From a clear puddle in a coffin yard, the boxes could be a boat, seen only briefly. And at once, your eyes sweat an oasis of salt, lashes in a full lush, your irises bloom underwater. The Merua wheels in a cart of water. It digs a well or a grave anywhere it goes. I buy my share of rain, and behold, the water confesses all that is twisted in me, but not how to fix it. I immerse my shadow all day to catch the still fish of my reflection. I open my fish mouth, but the waters never rush in. My words goggle. In my language, we name our men after mirrors. A mother of peers. I am the mica mired in clay, a false sheen. Look at me. I churn every river after every catch, rippling a mirror's one steady space. The last poem today is Good Friday, which also examines the violence or attempted violence through the story of Isaac and through the story of Christ in Christianity. Good Friday. Father is everything but a good snake charmer. Tell me, do you see only that shiver in the hands and not the restless animal steadied into a hole? In the fog, a wounded lamb limps, half of the sun cobwebbed with clouds by cave spiders. My tongue is a small sponge of vinegar, and teeth, spittle-washed stalagmite, lip, stone slab, sealing in tune, endowed to the sun in perpetuity. The lamb would be unswallowed after 3 days and 3 nights of indigestions. The cord bruised, but alive. Those bite marks are visible from the cold nails. Like the lamb, I want to herd my own flock, but father shares his wool with his own teeth and splits his hooves into claws. Father rubs honey for ointment and palm oil for turning. The proverb sets the wolf either free or on fire. Like me, the lamb is the father of the man. Thank you.
Hello. I was going to read only from the chap because that's, of course, the event we're here for. But the As most of you probably know, there's currently a genocidal siege on Gaza, and the surge of white supremacy, Islamophobia calls for murder, surveillance, the incarceration of people there, but also here compels me to start with this one. On dialogue. Never do I return to the question of the gun, open-armed, bright-eyed, intoxicated with the hint of blood. I do not relish the thought of waking to that morning which slouches ever so near to our woefully unprepared bodies. In Arabic class, we teach the kids the Americans invaded Iraq in 2003 after toppling the government of Saddam Hussein. The lesson is in language, not history. They are learning to find the subject, object, and verb. They are learning how conjugation works, the differences between nominal, adjectival, and verbal suffixes. In the Arabic class, I teach to not go into debt. I look outside the window, observing the Roman columns holding up every building that writes the bills which determine how much of my meager salary pays for M16s and Apache helicopters and other instruments of death whose names I do not have the stomach to learn. A hesitation compounded by the probability a teenager I have taught could soon enough wield them. At home, the unskippable YouTube ad for the Marines shows me a beautiful man who proclaims to be walking proudly towards the sounds of chaos. If it were possible to undo the criminality of his jaunt with nothing but the stroke of a pen, I would sleep so well at night. I would call for peace from the rooftop of my building, hug passing cops, and not whisper 1,000-year hex on their foul hands. If peace wasn't the land acknowledgement at the gun show, the DEI executive with the smile as wide as a dying lake, I would write it on cardboard and come up with a catchy slogan for the evening news. If I'd known a piece that was anything but the Democrat who won an Oscar, thanked God and Harvey Weinstein for it, I'd liberally use the word terrorist, pretend like there are reasons beyond the most obvious why the men we pay to keep us safe flash fangs and claws and guns and knives and badges and warrants and all manner of other devices and tools I care not to name, lest I remember that peace broke my country harder than war, made a question out of Palestine, a puzzle of a border, a textbook in which Iraq is a sentence. The students ask me about what I intend to do and eat over the weekend. The conversation is short and concise. On Monday, we begin again. Alternative timeline. On a dusty rooftop in Giza, I tell Imam in another life, he and Hugh would have been the best of friends. I picture Hugh taking him by the arm down the Corniche or the Cape, the cool night air refusing silence. I hear their strings and tubes cutting through beaming crowds in Mbeba and Soweto. Miriam is serenading an open sea, clicking to the wind by El Muntaza. I see Biko and Nigm side by side in a crowded auditorium, a whole generation huddled around their voices. This is to say, in another life, revolution would be but abstract. Biko would be a doctor, perhaps in Durban. There would be no trains for Hugh to sing of, save for those that would bring him back to his loved ones safely. Nigm would only be known for love poems. What more could one ask for? My whole life, I have envied the kind of thirst for music that can be quenched by Elvis and Sinatra. I have prayed nightly for those I have idolized to find a good night's sleep before deadly fame. In another life, what must be said here is but fairy tale, ghost stories for the rowdy children. Kanafani would live in Akka. Baldwin would die in Harlem, neither knowing the taste of exile. I would write of bees and clocks. I would not need men's solemn crooning to put me to sleep. I would not mourn the dead. And this last one is from a sequence that is the namesake of the chapbook, At the Gates. At the gates, Mikhail makes me a feast of rain and dirt, for which I'm truly grateful. I've spent a lifetime dreaming of cities wide enough to hold me. I have feared open roads, the seduction of the unfathomable. All my life, I have prayed for a soil unburdened by time, say an Eden of a nap. And yet, I sit before him alone. He asks me about my kin and country. I say, I am sorry if I ever spoke out of a mouth that was not mine. I say we and hope that means something. I don't pretend to know where we live. If there is a place for us, I have known it only by name, but never mapped. I have looked for us on the highway, only found sirens, restless screeching, choir of dust, shriveled lotus by an empty bank. Maybe we are all just in love with scorched temples, dead languages. Every dry river has a lake for a mother. And I'm tired of the violence of water, how it holds the still land with its ego. Somewhere there's history without burden. There is an us I don't have to wash of blood and kerosene. Cut off my tongue if I claim I know what it looks like, but hear me when I say it does not smell like gated flowers or stale fear underneath a thick blanket. I know I too am guilty of this legacy. I have praised the dirt. I have spat on only when it grows what I ask of it. I've dug a grave for every nightingale who sang too loud, and for that you can call my mouth rotten but never rested. Insomnia's the only vocab my cities ever gave me, and I speak it well. Let it overflow from my open mouth onto the tired earth. I know we have all grown weary from the taste of rust, how its brittle trauma makes a home out of our teeth. But find me a history that has ever undone us, and I will go to bed tonight, unfazed by the summer. He says it is foolish to fear the dark. I say God gifts us the night, and for that I am eternally grateful. There were days when I wished myself small enough to die in the flame of a lantern, but I have settled for that music which shakes the stillness. I have mocked martyrdom's allure. I am weak, oh God. I was never anything like Bilal or Omar. Forgive me, my timid jaw, my quiet hands. They only want to build. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming through. My chapbook is called Hairpins, and I'm going to start from the poem called Restricted Colors. Tonight, he searches my face for traces of a beauty he had in my silence. He wakes me up, sets my house on fire. I close all of my windows and doors so that the smoke of the fire does not exit. But my neighbors smell the restricted songs he sings, and violent knocks appear on the door. He runs into his barri and turns into my dream. My dream transforms him into a girl before it allows him to pour his tears into my cup of coffee. To wake up, I climb the wall, stand on the chimney, drawing the smoke so that no one could know my house is on fire. I keep my mouth shut for the smoke to not show off its restricted colors because I'm restricted to say what's inside of me. The next poem is called The Way of the Cross. The light exists in different forms. Sometimes it is the freedom that only darkness can offer. We became alive during nights and died on mornings before we'd return back at night, dressed in our sisters' beads and softness. The dark teeth of the night chewed our sanctuary. Now we hide our sugar in cold drinks or in espresso so that mouse do not taste our sweetness. But no man hides stars in the night sky. Night watchmen smelled our perfume. Now we were afraid of daylight and its eyes. We accompany each footstep into the day with a rosary bead or eyes we meet. Turn into courtrooms when they see us, and each of our steps feels like one station of the way of the cross.
This next poem is called Bird Migration, yes. We met on a train to minor seminary, Our Lady of Flowers, an all-male place where the only woman is a patron saint. You'd later tell me I was Our Lady of Flowers because of my name, Fleur. French because my father was Congolese. His presence in South Africa, a migration from a civil war. While other such sons of Congolese migrants were named after wars, my father named me after flowers. Maybe he wanted to forget the war. Maybe he wanted to hide the war. Maybe that's why the war kept coming back in our bloodline. When a war is hidden, it always comes back. On our first day at the seminary, having not come with a parent, you walked beside my mother as if you could be anybody's son, something you shared with migrants, humans ready to be citizens of any country. When the rector asked you, "Are you with them?" you quickly nodded, attaching yourself to strangers, avoiding that would shake our hearts first, cutting short a sense of belonging, something I later learned you were denied by everyone, having always been on the move between your uncles and aunts, always being moved into a new vase when you were starting to fix your roots in another one soil. Another commonality you shared with migrants, always on a run from places that call them migrants, thieves, spit on their feet, and chased them when they had started to make home out of hard lives. We became each other's safe houses, the way two migrants from the same country are each other's motherlands. We met to remind ourselves of our mother tongues. That's why you asked me how Zulu tasted like. Can you taste the language? I asked. Yeah, in your mouth. I can carve my tongue in your mouth and teach myself any language you speak. Someone had us speaking our mother tongue, two migrants speaking Swahili in London, and called us migrants, thieves, spat at our feet, and saw they began wars we hid inside our burials, and saw they began wars we hid inside our diaries. We decided to bury our mother tongues in our mouths for being seen as nationals, for being seen as insiders, as real boys, as normal people. We started to avoid meeting each other. When we'd run into each other, you'd say, "Flare," and I'd show you a flower in my teeth and walk away. My father once told me he detests anything that reminds him of home, of Congo, because that thing, that fellow migrant, that photograph from Pointe Noire, will always remind him he's now home, which is a war to live in a place that sees you as an outsider, a thief, spit at your feet. Like my father, we cut the umbilical cord before our love could birth a war. We buried the war in the river some miles away from school, but the river is always running. Migration and running have something in common, you know. At the end of the first year at the seminary, my mother, afraid that the seminary had something that was making me queer, changed my school to a mixed school. But the river stretches like a serpentine being. It reaches his new school in a girl who saw I can drown in her. But because the river followed me, because the war when hidden will always come back, I unburied the umbilical cord, wore it like a necklace, and dared the girl to love me. I said, "I'm bisexual, can you still love me?" Now my classmates spit on my feet like I'm a migrant. Father asked me to be patient. I will find you a new school next year, he says. I take note in my head, but migration is a seasonal movement of queer little boys like me. Okay. I'm going to read this one called Hijla. 1. This is a landlocked country. There are not enough beaches to normalize the art of nakedness. At the campfire where we burn secrets from our mouths, I remember Muntader al-Zaidi exercised freedom by opening the laces of his shoe. To mean you don't always have to open the window in your mouth in order to be seen. My sign tonight is my sister plaiting my hair. Father's free speech tonight is that bisexual boys should burn in this campfire, a la the starburst we roast. 2, the curse is so strong it was able to turn my tongue into a serpent. The snake hits my teeth, and in my father's eyes, my teeth fall into the fire like rotten mangoes. When I'm done setting the names of all the boys I've loved before free from my mouth, mother crosses herself. 3, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy intersexuality that merged masculinity with femininity and named me Hijra, the third gender. 4, this prayer is to explain how a moonlit night is a half-broken day and children will watch it through windows to pay homage to the moonlight, the mixture of daylight and night darkness. Hijla, Godis magnum opus. This is the last poem. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for your patience and the generosity of your time here with us. I'm going to try my best to time check myself. Usually my partner is the one that time checks me, but I know we're running late, so I'll try to read only 2 poems. And the first poem that I'm going to read is actually a poem that came to me when I went to a museum and I encountered one of Karime Weems' photography. It was called the Igbo Landing. And it was a photo of a very lifeless sort of seacoast, the coast of Georgia. And it was called the Igbo Landing. And on a closer read, it says here, a bunch of Igbo slaves basically took themselves back to the ocean and drowned themselves, saying the water brought us, the water would take us away, because they refused to be enslaved. And in looking at that photograph, I heard a voice, and this is the narrative. It's titled The Igbo Landing Warrior. The sweet smell of palm wine drifted through the homestead to drench the dry but rooted bones of sleeping elders as pregnant gourds hung high in the trees awaited the tapping pleas of intercessors and bided their time to libate the land. In the Obi, a cutlass submitted to my kinsman's sharpening stone with hopes for an early foray to the forest, where hunters murmur hurried greetings in reply to the laughter of maidens on the footpath, hidden only the groans of unlucky hyenas. The sound of morning rising urged wrapper-clad women to the stream, fretting babies lodged safely on their backs as the clan's gong called from far away, summoning councils to solve disputes when I washed the kindred's worried feet and placed them on the road to the arrow priest. The moon full, having appeased the big alpha for his forthcoming, headed home unsure of what mood the sun will wake, leaving the Iroko in their matrimonial ritual to gather in the shadows, the spirits, and hold the night for the day. Just before the moon, I marched steadily, holding in my sack 2 white pigeons and a pound of river clay. The gods had summoned the warriors of the clans in the face of dissenting elders and ancestors to carry a disquieting peace to the sea people to whom the land was neither mortal nor sacred. And we, weighing our strength, obeyed the gods, for the seasons had settled into a pandemonium, stealing unripe men and maidens for the sea. At the four crossroads of our clans, we gathered all 8 to wait for the priest while the young ones encircled us to chant the warrior song. Nzobu nzobu enyimba. Zobu nwoke enyimba. Zobu nwanyi. Knowing our mission, we forcefully feigned to trample the foreign elephant. The dust rose to envelop and blind us, and where we would stomp down the rains to slay the dust, the night broke loose from the Iroko and cast us like trapped hyenas into the netherworld, where the sea people roasted our children between endless skies, eating their brains with pitchforks and liquor, while we, harnessed to giant boats, floated in the swamp of our excrement and drowned in the earth-quaking wailings of our violated daughters. The day frolicked with the night, each chasing the other, laughing with the sea people as they bound the weak ones to large rocks and sent them on a futile errand to crack the ocean's bottom. The gods had been slaughtered, I was certain. We were so far from the land and yet nowhere near the ancestral world. Now I wake to the warning shrieks of crickets and birds I do not recognize. A kingsman has been whipped again. He is silent, hanging upside down from a pole, and we are near the land, a land. Holding my valor, I struggle to stand and stop the trembling veins, the chattering teeth. Around me, warriors breathe in fear, scrounging for refuge in living corpses. Chained hands cover what is now the sign of our defeat, knowing we are no longer warriors, nor the living, nor the dead. They lead us in chains from the edge of the sea, plodding through a thin and miserable swamp toward their forest flooded with palms. A kingswoman stumbles against crushed grass. She is whipped, and I wait, looking to the heavens. The palms look diseased, unlike the ones at home. The sky is lit, but the sun is lost. The air is burdened with tears, and now it dawns. This forest has been visited. Amadioha has been here. I noticed a shadow in a stagnant pool, and I long to follow or just to stoop and quench my thirst, but the chains on my feet are clogged with mud. The blood of my kingsman trickles into the pool. A sharp twig pierced his worn-out heel. I look at him, and a spirit dashes across. And then 2, then 3, and more. From the wind, the chant comes, bearing the anger of our gods, our children, our spirits, our maidens, and ancestors, our mothers and elders, in the roar of fearless warriors. Osimiri, Duranye bia, Osimiri, Duranye la. The faces of my clansmen depict my thoughts. In silence, we nod. Our chi had come along. It was time to fight, to release our souls and take back the spirit of Igbo land. Deep waters, you led us here. Deep waters now lead us home. Deep waters, you led us here. Deep waters now lead us home. As we walk backwards with our song, amidst the Tawiah of their whips, their faces cloud up with fear and despair as they watch us drag death by its ear to the sea. Now, the final poem, I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. I see there's a restaurant here. It's the Africa Center, so I'm going to think they serve African food. And if you happen to be in New York, you live here, please come by and ask them if they have yam. That's my favorite food. And this poem is an ode to yam. As an immigrant, when you eat, it takes you on a journey of nostalgia, of memories. And this poem is titled, If I Wrote About Yam. In simple words, just boil with salt and serve with oil. If I tell you of the many ways, roasted or fried, pottage or steamed, pounded or grilled. Yam is the symbol of Igbo, alpha beta of a tongue. In the sacred text, the other half of power. Oh, to hold the knife and the yam. In the beginning, it was a word seeming like I am, but now is the road to the old days with my father, between the city I'd called home and the teeming ancestral town. It is the feast and the place, Iriji, the New Yam Festival. If you read closely, the Yam Eating Festival. In essence, the harvest. And in that particular town, we called it Jimbise. Mbise being the town, it meant Mbise Yam, because it was not just any yam, it was Jimbise. The sound of the phrase demanded a full mouth, bursting like lit gunpowder. It felt rooted and strong, and in our Catholic home, August 15th is a feast day, only known as Jimbise. Yam is the night split wide open, spilling the daylight out of foreign-made generators, forcing the dense darkness of the rainforest to draw back, enfolding in itself the soul force of kingsfolk, carrying in the chatter of twilight creatures, drums booming at the retreat, and all that is left of the dead is silence. As elders gather in greeting, Igbo Kwenu, Kwezwene, fists, crossing fists at the wrists, titled canes gently touching head to head, and bare-chested men wrestle at the square, muscles dancing for young women watching, while wives and mothers of husbands cook and feed and sing and revel in the feast. Jimbise. It is the village children playing with their city cousins in compounds, in the marketplace, where they mimic the masquerades who out of nowhere break off into sprints, chasing the children who dare come out to watch them and follow them, then stop to dance for a frightened child who sought the crook of safe kindred hands. This towering pyramid of layered raffia skirt and oversized mask, the enormity of their size and movement now a marvel. Jimbise. It is the palm wine and stout, Guinness and Star, even Fanta and Coke, but also in the shadows, the kai in tin cans, in pursuit of the yam, roasted and served with red palm oil, steamed in light but spicy fish soups, concocted in ngwongwo, a kind of gumbo, and for the frail fairies from the cities, plain fried with egg sauce. There's always something for the madness in all of us. Jimbise. It is the teenage boys stealing tube-shaped types, jostling to roast them over open fires for the winner of the name duel, and then twisting pointed knives through the tube to fill the hole with ground hot ose. If I call you and you answer, you lose. If you call me and I tell you, you call and you answer, I win. And you roast in the courtyard within the brick front house and clay kitchen line, where spaces are swept clean for combat. Battling boys gather to see who can consume a smoking hot tube with an unflinching gaze and fiery tongue, cough, and let a speck fall on that hallowed ground, and you lose to Che. Groans and pledge to roast another day, besieged with thoughts of when to steal and how to stuff the yam, to cut a boy to earth or down a size, a Trojan horse, Jimbise. It is the libation to earth, God of harvest, giver of the yam. To those just beyond is constant in the crowd, that spirit human vibration, Igbo-ness, which formed like a bone inside me, creating at once solidity and tenderness, the steadfast trunk bearing the branches of my multiplicity. Thank you.
Let's hear it for the poets again. Thank you. I don't know how you people count 5 minutes though. I really don't understand how that works. But listen, this has been wonderful, and I think this has been a great exploration of the range of voices and sounds that we get. We are looking at the time, and so what I thought I would do is just see if we could have maybe 3 questions from the audience for these poets who are here. And then, you know, and of course, I'm unpanicked if you don't, because then we will just mingle and talk to each other afterwards. But I don't know if anybody has a question for any of these poets. I'd love to hear. Anybody? No? No questions? Yes, somebody. I can't see, so you have to like wave if you had. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. This is an open question, so if anyone feels intrigued to answer. I noticed that almost everyone wrote about language, a foreign language, and as colonized people, obviously, we have complicated relationships with languages. So I was wondering how you feel about writing in English, if there was a conscious choice or a process in that, or if you also write in other languages. I would just be curious to hear about that.
Anybody? Did everybody hear the question? Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I am not very literally talented in Yoruba, so I doubt my expertise in Yoruba, but I try to infuse Yoruba into my English poetry because we don't have an established tradition of Yoruba poetry the same way we have in English or every other language. I mean, we have it in oral literature, and but I read a lot of poets who translate Yoruba to English. Hussein Ahmed is one of them, and so many other fantastic writers who translate Yoruba poetry into English. But I primarily don't write in Yoruba language, which is a shame, but I try to infuse my Yoruba sensibilities and Yoruba philosophies and try to preserve myself, because to use the language is to preserve my own identity in a way, to preserve my culture and everything. So it's a struggle, really. That's the short response, but I try my best to infuse Yoruba and English together.
Anybody else?
I guess the answer to that, I have sought to write Igbo poetry, but generally I think that writing in English is not, to write as an Igbo writer, if I were put it that way, the English that I write is not just English, right? Is English that is infused, is English that's made a journey, right? And so I utilize Igbo words or Igbo sentences because that is the reality that I'm portraying. I'm portraying a reality in which English as the language is expanded because of the journey that English itself has taken to places, including Igbo land, and has interacted in that culture, with that culture. And as such, when it comes out, it's not just English. I don't know if that makes sense to put it that way. But I do try to write in Igbo as an exercise. Igbo is a language that I believe to be poetic. We use a lot of proverbs. And one of those, actually, they say that a proverb is the oil with which we eat words. And so in utilizing Igbo, I find the poetry in the language itself, but I also bring it into the translated form in English. So there are ways in which I can phrase something that is not quite English as you see it, but is really Igbo being translated into English, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That's good. I will take one more question. Anybody?
Oh, actually, could I?
Yeah, okay, well, all right, go ahead. Jump in.
Oh, yeah. I used to have a really conflicted relationship with writing in English as opposed to Arabic. A background to that is that even though I am a native speaker of Arabic for a host of different socioeconomic imperial reasons, I ended up with my literary skills much more developed in English. And I used to have a huge conflict about that, but what pushed me to move away from that is realizing that it's about what you do with the language. It's about how you employ the language. And English, despite being a language that has come to most of us through imperial, if not very directly colonial means, can be used for liberatory means and can be used for genuine and radical cross-cultural, cross-national dialogue. And Arabic can be used for reactionary means. And so I have sort of found myself now comfortable writing for English because I know what I'm writing towards with it. And at the same time have been trying to have my Arabic skills catch up. So I've been writing in it, and it's getting there, but you know, hopefully.
Okay. Good. Yes.
You spoke in your poetry about Caravaggio. Why that particular artist?
Oh yeah. I love classical times. You know, I believe that they have a lot to teach us. It's a repository of knowledge that has been remodeled so many times, and I'm a fan of his style of painting, in which it does not tell the true story. It does not tell the whole story with, you know, the whole lighting on the canvas. I believe that he gives the reader or the viewer a lot of agency in how they interpret the painting. And I was writing towards the Sign of the Ram, which is about the story of Isaac, and I was looking for every material available. And then I saw, oh yeah, Caravaggio has a picture, has a painting of the sacrifice of Isaac. So it was a prompt that I gave to myself to write on a particular day, and that was a prompt for the day, the sacrifice of Isaac. Of course, I saw other paintings by other artists, but his was the one that appealed most to me in the incompletion of the act of sacrifice itself, like the interplay between light and darkness, just represented what I wanted to do with the poem.
Mm-hmm. So appropriation goes both ways. Folks, thank you all for coming out, and I think that let's just thank the writers for their wonderful work. Yeah. All right. Bonsoir. Good night. Take care. Mingle. Do what you do. Thank you.
Home isn't just where we're from. It's the sounds that move us, the stories that shape us, and the flavors that heal us. It's the communities that connect us, the ones that hold us down, the ones that raise us up. Home is a feeling we all know. So if you're looking for it, you can always find it here. The Africa Center. Home is here.
Shame.